What's up, guys? My name's Brandon and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be discussing even more new features in iOS 26.1. We're going to talk about the new iPhone 18 Pro colors that have already leaked, details on the next new Apple products, ads are coming to Apple's first-party applications, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to continue staying up to date with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and also check out the Apple Den Discord server to continue the conversation. Okay, so let's start with what happened this week. So this week we did see the RC or release candidate build of iOS 26.1, the next major release for Apple, the next big point release that is going to be coming next week. Now, this RC was pretty interesting because we did not see any type of release notes with this update, which is pretty unusual for a release candidate build like we saw with 26.1. So we don't really know of any new features that have not been previously discovered, which again, that's unusual, and we will probably see some surprises when we see the 26.1 official release when it has the full changelog and it will tell us some things that we did not know beforehand. But one thing I did notice was different in the RC build is we go down here to privacy and security, and then we scroll down near the bottom where we have background security improvements. If we go into there, it shows us that we have the 26.1 release candidate security improvement installed, and we tap on these three dots right there. It shows us the option to remove the background security improvement, which is 26.1 RC. You can remove and restart right there. So this section is brand new. Again, this is kind of a rebrand of the rapid security response updates that we saw from Apple previously that they kind of just ended abruptly. Now, also in the settings, if we go into our general tab, we still have that left alignment. So inside of settings, now at 26.1, we will see that left alignment in the settings, and also with folders. So if we go in here and go to a folder, you can see the text up there is left aligned. But also if we go into here and then scroll down, we do have a section now for local capture. I talked about this previously, but I just wanted to mention it again because before you could only access this inside of the control center, but now you have a standalone setting for it where you can choose the save location and to choose audio only for saving that local capture. Now, something I didn't really mention much of, but I wanted to address it, is inside of settings, and if we go into accessibility and then down here to display and text size, we have a new show borders toggle right here with 26.1. So if you have this turned on, you will now see the borders. You can see the button up in the top left. This is what it looks like with off. When you turn it on, it will make the borders around different UI elements more noticeable. It will have borders around them so they don't get lost with, the UI of the overall liquid glass setup, the design of it. So that is a new option that will be nice for accessibility users. But of course, the big feature that everybody's going to be talking about is inside of settings. If we go down to display and brightness and then into liquid glass, this of course is where we can change it from clear or tinted. So you now have the option to choose how you want your liquid glass to look on your device. So that's something I never thought we'd see from Apple. I thought we'd see a slider if anything, but this is what we have now with 26.1, and I would expect this same interface here to ship with the final release. And then of course, one of my favorite features in 26.1 is with music, where you can just do a swipe gesture to go to the next or the previous song from the now playing screen or from the little now playing bar down at the bottom. Now also, if you go into the three dots right here in music, we now have a go to tab, and this allows you to go to playlist, album, or artist. This looks a little bit different than it looked on 26.0. Now, I've also had a few comments asking me questions about Apple Intelligence and if it's actually going to be out of beta when 26.1 official launches. So some people are thinking that there's going to be like an over-the-air update that will get Apple Intelligence out of beta. So, that's possible, but if I had to guess, I would say no. I think we are still going to be in beta for Apple Intelligence until at least 26.4, when Apple is planning on doing the full revamp of Siri. So we're probably going to be in beta for quite some time, possibly even throughout the rest of the iOS 26 lifecycle. So no, I don't think Apple Intelligence is coming out of beta, especially with 26.1. Now let's talk about something very controversial, because this week we saw that Apple is planning to add ads into first-party applications. And the first one that's going to be getting that treatment is Apple Maps. So according to Mark Gurman, he said this: Apple is moving ahead with plans to bring ads to the Maps application as early as next year. This will allow restaurants and other businesses to pay to have their details featured more prominently within the app's searches. The concept is quite similar to search ads inside of the App Store, where developers can pay for their software to appear in a promoted slot based on user queries. I'm told the Maps version will have a better interface than what Google and other companies offer inside of mapping services. So it's going to look better than Google Maps. So it also says the Apple approach will also leverage AI to ensure that the results are more relevant and useful. But Gurman does mention the big risk, and kind of the one thing I've been thinking about a lot with this, because he says that the big risk Apple faces here is a potential customer backlash or consumer backlash. Some customers are already unhappy that the iPhone has turned into a digital billboard for services like Apple Care Plus, Apple Music, Apple TV, and Fitness Plus. Because as you guys know, a lot of people complain when they go into the settings application and it tells them about their free trials and advertises the Apple first-party application subscription. So this could be another step that's going to make people, kind of maybe get upset about ads being inside of Maps, even though they will be, they're not going to be obtrusive or anything like that. They're going to be in the search results. So I don't know. What do you guys think about ads coming to Apple Maps in the form of, search queries and details being above other restaurants, just like you see on Google and in the App Store? And while we're talking about ads, we have to talk about what Samsung is doing, because I don't mean to make this an Apple versus Samsung thing, but at least Apple is not putting their ads inside of a refrigerator screen. So yes, Samsung is going to take advantage of refrigerator advertising space by showing ads for Family Hub refrigerators in the US. So it's actually going to be a widget on the refrigerator screen that's going to show ads. Now, this week, we also heard an update on the digital passport feature that's coming to the iPhone. So we heard about this a while back. This was supposed to be in iOS 26, but it was delayed. Apple is saying that this is now delayed. So basically, when you tap on the plus and the wallet, eventually you will be able to add your digital passports. And this week, Jennifer Bailey, which is the vice president of Apple Pay and Apple Wallet, said that you will soon be able to add a digital version of your US passport to your iPhone. So she didn't really elaborate too much on that, but she did, indicate and reassure us that that feature is still coming soon. So we don't really know what soon is. Maybe it's 26.2, maybe it's 26.4. We're not too sure. Apple did say it should be coming by the end of this year. So my hope is that it's going to be a feature in iOS 26.2, but of course I will keep you posted on that. Now, if you're somebody who uses WhatsApp and you have an Apple Watch, there's good news for you, because this week we saw that WhatsApp is testing an Apple Watch application. So it looks like this application will support reading WhatsApp messages, sending replies, sending message reactions, sharing voice messages, and more, all without the need to open up the application on your iPhone. So you'll be able to do everything from your Apple Watch with WhatsApp. And speaking of that revamped Siri that I mentioned earlier, by the way, we did also see more reassurance again from Tim Cook this week about Apple Intelligence and the revamped Siri being on track to launch later next year. So we're still hearing that we're going to see that revamped Siri in 2026, because Tim Cook himself has said it multiple times now on earnings calls and things like that. So can't wait for that to actually come. And before we stop talking about software as a whole, let's talk about the performance and the battery life with iOS 26.1 RC, because I have been using this on my main device and I have to say it's been excellent. So I already talked about this in my What's New video and also in my Beta 4 video, but I think performance and battery life have improved here on 26.1 compared to 26.0, 26.0.1, and those updates. So performance especially has improved with the RC. Battery life is about the same, but I do think that battery life on 26.1 as a whole is better than 26.0, which is great to see, because I would only expect that to continue getting better. Now, let's also talk about when to expect that final release. So next week is going to be the week of November 3rd, and I think that is when we're going to see iOS 26.1 get officially released to the general public. So Apple did release the RC build on a Tuesday, which is kind of weird, especially late on a Tuesday. They've been sticking to Mondays lately. So really it could be any time in the first half of next week. However, Apple does typically stick to Monday releases, especially for public software updates. So if we don't see it Monday, we should see it on Tuesday, but Apple again does typically stick to those Monday times around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard. And then after that, we should be seeing iOS 26.2 betas kick off soon, and that's when we should see some big new features come in those betas. All right, so now let's move on to some more Apple news. And let's start with the next round of new Apple products that are coming with OLED displays, because we're now hearing from Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg that Apple is developing new versions of the iPad mini, iPad Air, MacBook Pro, and MacBook Air, all with OLED displays. So he says that the iPad mini will likely be the first one to get the upgrade, with an OLED equipped model arriving as early as next year. And he says that this move is part of a broader shift to OLED and gives customers a fresh reason to upgrade devices, but the shift is also expected to bring higher prices. The iPad mini update could cost as much as $100 more because of the pricier display technology. Apple has also tested a redesigned casing for the iPad mini that's water resistant, matching a feature on the recent iPhones. And he says that as part of that push, Apple has explored a new speaker system that uses vibration-related technology. The change allows the company to remove speaker holes where water could enter. So that's how it's going to be more water resistant. Meanwhile, he says that the next iPad Air is going to arrive in the spring of next year, and it's going to continue to use LCD because Apple is preparing to switch the device to OLED in a subsequent generation. So the iPad Air is not going to get OLED for its next, upgrade. And he says that the iPad Air will be the last tablet in the lineup to make the transition. And he says that Apple doesn't have active plans to move its entry-level iPad to OLED, at least not yet. And as far as the MacBook Pro goes, he says the next MacBook Pro is set to become the first Mac with an OLED screen in its next redesign. Apple has also recently begun working on a MacBook Air that will use the same technology, but that upgrade isn't likely before 2028. The M5 chip will come to the current Air design, retaining the LCD screen in the spring of next year. And also in related news, the M6 iPad Pro, the next iPad Pro that's going to come out, is most likely going to feature the vapor chamber cooling system that we currently see on the iPhone 17 Pro models. Now let's talk about the new colors that are coming for the next iPhone Pro model. So the iPhone 18 Pro is going to come in some new colors. And yes, it's super early to be talking about the iPhone 18 Pro, but a lot of times these new colors are shown off well in advance. They may not be the exact tone, but sometimes these early rumors do actually turn out to be true. So anyways, we're hearing this from Instant Digital over on Weibo, and he's now showing that next year's iPhone 18 Pro models are going to come in these color options, or at least one of these color options, he said: coffee, purple, and burgundy. So one of those is going to be the new color for the iPhone 18 Pro lineup. So it seems like Apple is maybe testing them out and seeing which one is best. Now, speaking of the iPhone 18 Pro, the camera system on that model is going to be insane if this leak is true. So according to Digital Chat Station over on Weibo, the main rear camera on both the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max will have a variable aperture for the first time ever on an iPhone, and the telephoto lens is going to have a larger aperture. And here's the direct quote. So he says, "At present, from the supply chain information, the iPhone 18 series will further strengthen the Pro series. In addition to the form upgrade, Pro Max has seen the variable large aperture material, and the 48 megapixel periscope has also increased the aperture. The current plan is the iPhone 18 and Pro Series Air folding screen in September 26, and the standard iPhone 18 and 18e in the first half of 27, which that's the staggered release that we've been talking about for quite some time now. So next year, we're going to see the Pro models and the Fold, and then in the spring, or early in 2027 is where we're going to see the base model iPhone 18 and the 18e, the cheaper model. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a woman in Texas named Maria walked outside one morning to find that her truck was gone. It was stolen right from her apartment complex in Dallas. And since Maria had dealt with this before, she came prepared by hiding an AirTag inside of the truck just in case it ever happened again. So of course, when she went to load up the Find My application on her iPhone, the AirTag wasn't updating consistently, and actually would not always show an exact location for an entire week. So an entire week went by and she never got an exact location for this AirTag. But about a week later, it finally pinged and showed the truck's exact location. So of course she did what all of us would do. She called the police and they launched surveillance in that area. And sure enough, they found Maria's stripped truck sitting in the backyard of a property along with a trailer that had been attached to it. So once the officers secured a search warrant, they searched the property and uncovered multiple other stolen vehicles. So this was basically an entire chop shop operation. So in total, 4 suspects were arrested and charged with felony theft, and a 5th person was taken into custody on unrelated charges. I love these AirTag stories where an AirTag takes down multiple criminals and a whole operation. So love it if if you guys, again, if you have anything valuable at all, put an AirTag in there. Otherwise, you might end up on Apple Weekly and I'll be talking about you and something of yours getting stolen. Anyways, guys, that's it for this episode of Apple Weekly. I hope you had a great Halloween. I'm in the orange spirit right now. I'm kind of always in the orange spirit here with the orange iPhone and the orange lights. But I hope you guys enjoyed your Halloween and hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Let me know all your thoughts down there in the comments below, and I will see you very soon.